My name is Cochran, so I'm here today to talk about analyst burnout, something I call burnout by design, and why we have burnout in cybersecurity and how we can move forward with a better program, better SOC. So around here in Black Hills, I know that there is the obligatory cat gifts before training, so I had to throw in my own little cat picture just for fun. Anyway, my name is Cochran. Past 10 years, I've led a hybrid team that was responsible for the detection and response, as well as detection engineering, threat hunting, threat intel. So the team wore a lot of different hats and had a lot of exposure running those functions. So um, and I actually just recently, in the past 2 weeks, started a new role, and where I am overseeing and managing the entire cybersecurity operations team at a nonprofit. And so not only are we covering the SOC, but the entirety of the cybersecurity operations program. So it's a definitely a new challenge, and look forward to it, and very excited for that. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that I'm a husband and a father to three boys, ages 2 to 7. So if you've ever been around boys that age, you'll know that as parents, I have to look at everything as a potential weapon. And not only is it a weapon, but how much is it going to hurt, and how much is the ER visit the patient first going to cost? So very good practice for threat modeling. So if you're in Discord, my handle is Casey the Kasem, and there is my LinkedIn profile. So obligatory. These are my views and opinions, and not of any employer, past, present, or future. In our short time today, I want to make sure that you understand that this is something that analyst burnout is a problem we've been talking about for over 12 years. It's a long-standing problem. We know of it. Let's do something about it. We need to. Our analysts, our team members are our greatest asset, and we owe it to them to ensure that their day-to-day work is meaningful and not causing burnout. We need to make sure that the tools and the detections that we use are enhancing our analysts' work and allowing them to do their job in a streamlined fashion, and it's not to replace them or to automate more garbage alerts. We need to remember that any given framework has its limitations. And if we hold ourselves to that and trying to cover it in its entirety, we're going to lead into a large volume of alerts and most of them are going to be irrelevant. Moving forward, we need to make sure that we understand the environment that we're working in, what we're trying to protect, ensuring that things are configured in a way to make it easier to detect. Analyst burnout has been a long-standing issue. We know of it, but how did we get here? From my point of view, this is largely self-inflicted. We buy into tools that are sold to us as the silver bullet to detect the next new shiny attack, or to reduce the false positive rate. But in reality, these tools rarely get the care and attention that they need to ensure that they are tailored to our environment, which results in, again, a large volume of alerts. And oftentimes, those alerts are lacking the context that we need to investigate and really don't apply to our environment. Again, these tools promise to reduce the false positives, and it didn't happen. This doesn't apply to everyone in the field or every organization, but there seems to be this fixation on being able to detect the entirety of techniques within a framework. So a lot of people we probably have experience with the MITRE attack framework, and the vendors know this, and they try to sell us tools or services and advertise to detect 90% or more of the MITRE attack framework techniques. This is, again, more detections does not equal better detections. All of this together results in repetitive, boring work for analysts. In kind of the 2003 Voice of the SOC, they report that 25% of analysts report that over half of their work is repetitive. So our analysts, again, are our greatest asset. We want to make sure that we are utilizing their brains and their critical thinking skills, not just repeatedly just turning over tickets. So again, this is a long-standing issue. So what does this mean for an organization? So I don't think it's a secret that alert fatigue and burnout results in high turnover. A recent SANS survey says that 65% of analysts plan to or have been in their role less than 3 years. So this means that people with the experience and the skills that we need are leaving instead of staying and enriching their careers and providing value back to the organization. These the analysts that are do stay. The burnout leads to poor decision making and makes them a risk to the environment, being susceptible to things like social engineering and missing valuable detections because the volume of alerts leads to excess noise, which hides valuable alerts that could help us detect breaches earlier. Ultimately, this costs organizations money, not only in wasted time for the analyst, but in damaged reputation and regulatory fines. So in recent headlines, the city of Hamilton was denied a cyber insurance claim because of a lack of login security. So this isn't just hypothetical. This is real dollars, in this case, to a local municipality. While 5 million might be chump change to a large organization, for a city government, that's quite a bit of money. When we talk about burnout, we often talk about impact to organizations. We don't talk about what is arguably more important, and that is the human impact. Alert fatigue and burnout is indicative of chronic stress. There's been plenty of studies that show the different impacts, including exacerbation of mental health issues. It's going to reduce cognitive abilities, increase illness in our employees, which leads to absenteeism. Again, we're causing real pain to our employees and our teammates by refusing to address this problem. I want that point to really sink in, because I don't think that is our intention at all as people leaders, but that is the real life implications here. One of the tools that gets tossed around a lot is automation and AI. Remember that AI, machine learning, can't solve all of our problems. They can't automate the SOC or SOC of the future, as some vendors would say. These tools learn from large data sets, but those general data sets aren't going to be tailored to your environment. And if they are learning off of your environment, how do we know that there isn't malicious traffic already in the environment that is being seen as baseline? So just food for thought there. One of the cases that I think really wraps this up in a neat little bow is the Target breach from 2013. So at the time, it was one of, if not the largest breach. And while the technical details of the breach aren't necessarily important, the response by the security team is. So at the time, Target Security had recently implemented FireEye appliances. So early in my career, I had the pleasure of working with them. So this is something near and dear to my heart. They were set to alert only. So these appliances allowed you to block malicious traffic or malicious files transversing the network, but it was set to alert only. And that was because there was a high volume of alerts with very little context. So some estimates say the target had hundreds of these alerts per day. There was no way that the analysts could respond to all of these, nor could they separate true positives from false positives. The resulting impact was a 46% drop in profits from the previous year in Q4, which is the busiest time for any retailer. So that's a pretty significant financial hit to Target there. And of course, we're still talking about this breach today. because of how widespread, how popular, how the visibility of this breach, a lot of experts weighed in, including John Strand from Black Hills. So I had to include that when I saw it. But what I think really stood out to me was this this last quote. The vast majority of FireEye's customers turn off that functionality, the malware blocking, because it's known for incorrectly flagging data as malware, which can halt email web traffic for business owners. While FireEye is cutting edge, it takes love, care, and feeding. So again, that cuts to the heart of the issue, where our tools need continuous tuning, and we need to make sure that we are not, if you have garbage in, you get garbage out. So if you don't tune it, you're not going to get the value for your tools. I've talked about the MITRE attack framework. There are legitimate purposes for the frameworks. But when we talk about implementing detection rules, we need to understand the scope here. We're talking about, in version 17, 468 sub-techniques. As I keep saying, more detection rules does not equal better monitoring. So if a vendor or a service provider is selling you on the fact that they can cover 90% or more of the MITRE attack techniques, that is a red flag. I'll use the clear Windows event logs sub-technique as an example. That could very well be, and most often is, legitimate activity. Think about where in the kill chain an attacker would clear the event logs. This is at the end when the damage is already done. So should we be focusing or alerting on something that is likely benign, or should we look earlier in the kill chain and find a higher fidelity detection rule? All that being said, how do we fix this? And to me, I think that this is pretty easy. Well, it's easier said than done, but I think that there's a clear path forward. These tools, automation, AI, machine learning, we should be using these tools to enrich our alerts, give us the threat intel that we need when related to any IP addresses in an alert. Let's automate our repetitive tasks and streamline the documentation that we have to do for each of our investigations. Again, know your environment, simplify the tools in your environment. If you have one remote desktop tool that is standard in your environment, it is much easier to detect an attacker that would be using an alternate remote desktop tool than if you have, no standards and have 4 or 5 different tools in the environment. We need to relentlessly tune our rules and ensure low false positive rates and ensure that our detections match what we are protecting in the environment, not just detection for detection's sake. And if you are not aware, Black Hills has a really good cyber deception course, which I had the pleasure of taking recently, which can help an organization, when implemented right, to implement really high fidelity detections. That is the end here.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, man.
Let's see the one question: what is worse for burnout? Too much to do or not enough to do? I think that depends on.
Can you really get burned out by too little to do?
I think so. I think they're two different problems, because if you don't have enough to do, then you get bored and you feel like your work isn't meaningful. But then again, if you are constantly taxed and you feel like you feel like your work isn't meaningful, then that's I think that would probably be worse.
Yeah, so I can actually share a personal experience. I worked in a position for it was like an engineering firm where they manufactured like the machinery that like rolls out like the chicken nuggets and stuff like that. Like that's the type of stuff they did. But I got a role there implementing Microsoft deployment toolkit to do all the imaging in the environment, and then basically do like support as well. But I implemented MDT in like a few weeks, and there was not a lot of needs for support. I maybe only got like 2 tickets a day or so. And that was the most bored I've ever been in my life. And I've heard people like say like, oh my gosh, that has to be like a dream. Like you don't do anything all day. Like I got to browse Reddit all day long. It was the most miserable position I've ever had. because I was just so incredibly bored. And there's only so much Reddit you can do without, you know. So yeah, just wanted to speak to that. Give like a personal experience. Like, yeah, it totally happens, like burnout from every perspective. But Static Tier had a question. Casey, can you comment on how we're going to train level 2, level 3 security people with all these tasks being taken over by AI at the level 1 roles?
That is something that I came across in researching this presentation. I can't lie and say that I have a single answer, but I think that really the burden is going to, I don't want to say burden, but it's really up to us as seniors in the cybersecurity space to mentor and train folks into the field. It's not going to be it's not going to be easy because there's going to be less entry level positions, but we need to make sure we identify talent even outside of the security space. Some of the best analysts that I've worked with came from other areas of IT and didn't necessarily start out in security.
I think we're going to have different types of entry level positions, though, as we progress through this time frame that we're in right now and the growth that we've seen with like AI and just technology as a whole, right? So I think a lot of jobs will probably get displaced, which like that's been my kind of go-to is like there's definitely gonna be a lot of displacement, but at some level we'll still have to have some type of entry level position to support not only end users but just some of the technologies as well. So maybe we'll have like a prompt support technician or something, it's like that's your entry level role, or something along those lines. Matthews asked, what does the job market look like over the last few months for people looking to get into an entry level SOC position?
So I can't really comment on looking for entry level positions. So when I was laid off earlier in the year, and so I think it's not a secret that the market's pretty brutal. I think that goes for kind of every level in cybersecurity, and so there's it's been tough, and I think we just have to kind of stay at it and find that open position. It may take longer than you're expecting, and I know I think Jason's got a talk coming up.
Job hunt like a hacker.
Yep. That I highly recommend. Recommend.
For sure. We were just talking about that earlier.
Yeah.
This is a great question. What are indicators when applying for jobs that a company doesn't have a good handle on analyst burnout, or even worst case, care about it?
The only thing I can think of, because it's going to be hard to determine that from a job posting, but I wonder if this is something that
during the interview you could definitely figure out.
Yeah, and you could probably find out by LinkedIn or Glassdoor, like especially if LinkedIn, I'm not sure if it requires Sales Navigator to see that intel of people who have been recently hired, if it's a large number and their employee status has not been changing a whole lot. Like let's say hypothetically, ABC Consulting has 200 team members, but they recently hired 20 people, but they still have 200 team members. Like, you got a pretty high turnover over there. But definitely check out Glassdoor as well. I know, it's kind of hard to judge that because the only time people go to online is to complain about somebody. Nobody's like, "Oh, ABC Consulting is the best thing," without being heavily prompted by ABC Consulting. But so definitely take those things with a grain of salt. But take a look and see, does this seem legitimate complaints?
Emily's, have you given any thought to a redesign of security teams where you mix SOC and security work? One model I've seen is 2 weeks in SOC and then 4 weeks doing tools, implementations, research, etc. Keeps your team skilled up and engaged.
Yes, actually. So from again, this opinion is mine, and not of any of my employers, past or present, but I kind of subscribe to a model that I've seen documented out of Microsoft and like Palo Alto, where you do automate the menial repeatable tasks in, for lack of a better term, the tier 1 piece. And then you do have analysts that are working on things like threat intel, threat hunting. I think that's kind of hitting at the core of what the question is that the people who are quote unquote in the SOC are doing other high level work, but you're reducing the volume of investigations that need to happen, but those investigations are more high level. So I think that's kind of hitting at the core of the question, but that's kind of how I feel.
Jack Joy, who's our next speaker, put a thing here in the Q&A on Zoom saying analyst burnout is so similar to hospitality burnout. Work, no breaks, no food, just on your feet and running for hours on end, smiling through the stress, being talked down to, and management just asking for more and more. Burnout is burnout. Mental health is so important, regardless of industry. Love the talk. Yeah. Good feedback.
One thing I'd like to add is in my job search, people are commenting about being asked to do more for less, and I 100% see that. And a couple of examples is some of the management positions that I was applying to, they basically were asking for someone who was a manager but also a senior analyst. So it's in some environments that kind of makes sense, but it seems more and more common where you're asked to be wearing multiple hats.
If you could put your crystal ball on, I mean, I know it's hard to determine this, but with this growing trend, do you see this type of trend lasting, through say summer or end of 2016 or 2026 or maybe longer? Or do you think this is a short-lived kind of stint and things are going to get back to, as much as I hate to say, get back to normal, in job placements and things of that nature in the foreseeable 6 or 8 months?
If I had to guess, I would say we're transitioning to kind of a new model, and we were mentioning before, there's less entry level positions, less tier 1 SOC analyst type work, and kind of I'll kind of compare this to Target. If you've been into a Target or even a Walmart or any retail establishment, there's more and more self checkout lines, and there's less people working those. There's less manned checkout lines. So, and I think we're kind of working towards that. But the folks that were running the registers before, they're doing other work. There might be a little bit less to go around, but I think we're just kind of changing the nature of what we do.
Casey, thank you so much for putting this on. Again, burnout, is definitely, like I said earlier, is definitely something that we all struggle with. I always make the joke of going out and touching some grass, and I literally mean it. Go out there, touch your grass, and enjoy some of that vitamin D sunshine, even though it is hot as all get out in a lot of parts of the country. But it does help to get up and move around and go for that walk and things of that nature. And hopefully this talk was informative to people. And next we will be going to something that everybody else also deals with, is imposter syndrome, and the strategic pivots, a real world career change chronicle by the Jack Roy. So definitely go over there, check that out. Thanks again, Casey, for this talk. We do greatly appreciate it, and we'll see y'all next time.
Thank you for having me.